And good morning and namaste, Utsuda. Welcome to Hindu Lounge, and everyone who has joined us today, welcome to Hindu Lounge. We have an exciting show today. This is, by the way, for those who are joining us for the first time, this is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or WHPA. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, and we talk about the contemporary American Hindu issues. Usada, we have a great show that we have put together today, and it came together almost at the last minute, but I think people who are joining today are really going to enjoy this particular show. So let me take away the screen share just for a second, and just maybe have both of us uh, in a side by side view. There we go. So Utsada, I still your for some reason hopeful. I have a feeling that your camera is not quite working because the picture is somewhat hazy and not as crisp as it should be for a camera that you have. So I'm not sure if you have in your settings you may not have set up the right camera, so that might be the problem. You can select the camera, but in any
It
case,
looks good to me, Ajay bhai. It
uh,
might take a minute to. Sometimes it takes a minute to see crispen up if the connection is.
that
Uh,
happens.
yeah,
Indeed,
yeah.
indeed, indeed.
From
Well,
my screen, it looks like
yeah,
it's
it might be just you have to go to your settings and see which camera is selected in Restream, because it
no, no.
changes, and the
It is the
default
right camera because I've been adjusting it around, and
and the
it is the.
default and the default resolution in Restream is actually low resolution. So I don't want to bore our viewers with our technical issues, but as you know, we are uh, 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 we experiment with different things every week, and sometimes this banter kind of helps us
So
kind of
so see if it
flow
has
together.
changed any bit, Ajay bhai, because I just changed the
Getting better.
setting.
Yes, yes. All right. So, Utsada, today we are going to. So, first of all, welcome. I want to introduce Utsada. Utsada is Utsad Chakrabarti. He is the executive director of Hindu Pact. And as I keep saying, that now he is the. After 80 episodes today is the 80th episode of Hindu Launch. And after 80 episodes, Utsada is, can be reasonably regarded as Hindu intellectual in America. I think maybe we wait till the 100th episode to give you a
No, no,
title,
no.
a formal
I
title.
was reasonably regarded as a Indian intellectual from the first episode, Ajay bhai.
There you go. Yeah.
That is why I was in these episodes. But
Yeah, so
no,
that
I'm
at the
kidding.
very least,
I really don't care about Hindu
I
intellectuals.
think at the very least you have developed a good sense of humor over the 80 weeks. You're starting out. You're very serious. But I think you're emerging humor appreciation. You have developed the humor appreciation in an
No, no,
emergent
let me qualify
fashion.
it. I have developed a appreciation of what comes across as human humor for from Ajay Shah. That is
There you
what has
go.
happened
Okay.
over
All right. Let me take it that. All right. So this, so that this, and I was just going to say that today's episode actually came together at the last minute. It's a really interesting article that we came across, and I am going to so that you have this article. This article that is the one that came up in Wall Street Journal, and I am going to actually I'm going to share this article, or so that maybe one of us should share this article. This is the article about how the left is trying to monopolize the media. But it's very interesting twist to that. Utsada. It is not talking about how left monopolizes the media, but it talks about how left monopolizes the uh, the misinformation in the media. Now, I want to start by saying that look, we live in the age of social media, and we live in the age of extreme polarization. And in this age of extreme polarization, in the age of um, and in the age of social media, where the news can get easily manufactured, and the news can get easily not just manufactured but also get easily transmitted, in that kind of environment, it is very easy for someone to take a fake news, misinformation, which has been popularized as fake news in past few years, and propagate it to hundreds of millions of people. And not only does that happen, but also when this fake news, because there are so many avenues for people to get news, people end up going to the sources they like. And media, the mainstream media has also played a significant role in this, because the mainstream media no longer is neutral. This is not the era of Edward R. Murrow giving news as he sees it. This is the era where people, the journalists, even the best of the journalists, have expressed their biases on issues when they present it. And the sources that people used to go to, whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, or some of these mainstream news channels, they all have very explicit news bias now. And because of that, people now gravitate towards the sources that reinforce their beliefs, that reinforce what they perceive to be truth. And this article, so that I'm now going to share the screen, and I'm going to show snippets of this article and talk to you a little bit about this article. So this is the one where, as I said, this is the article that came up in the Wall Street Journal. And let me know when you can see my screen. So that let me enable the share here, so you can see the screen now. And this is the
I don't see your screen. Yeah, yeah, now I see your screen,
yeah,
Ajay.
yes, yeah, okay. So this is the article. It's an article by Gerard Baker and from Wall Street Journal, and it talks about left-leaning media seek a misinformation monopoly. They peddle their own falsehoods while try to drive opposing views out of circulation entirely. Okay, so this is the so this is and then the article starts out in a very very rational way. It lists all the misinformation that comes out of both left and the right media. So and this is the article written before Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. And uh, so it gives the examples of how the mainstream media tried to normalize the fake news and the misinformation. So Kyle Rittenhouse is a domestic terrorist. Brett Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh, when he was got nominated to Supreme Court, there was a there was this narrative attack. I wouldn't even call it a narrative. There was an attack on him that he's a rapist, and without any substantiation as such. And with one person testimony that from something from high school, and it said Brett Kavanaugh is a rapist. Donald Trump won in 2016 only because he colluded with the Kremlin. Nick Sedman, the boy from Covington Catholic High School on the steps of Lincoln Memorial, was an entitled white bigot. So it goes over all of these, fake news, misinformation that became normalized as news if you go to certain news sources. And it is not one-sided. And and it talks about the 2020 elections and how certain segment of the population kept thinking that the election was stolen. And it also talks about some of the misinformation that comes from the right. Okay, so um, so these are all and the article then also that you've highlighted this. They were all conspicuously consensus account of the biggest stories reported, quote unquote, in the past 5 years by the usual newspaper and TV networks, relayed by the entire news food chain that seek to emulate these fake news sources, and retailed eagerly by half-fit entertainers of Hollywood, publicity-hungry professional athletes, and the crowd of gender and media studies graduate who churn out press releases for the S&P 500 companies. So this is the next part of it. Not only the fake news gets manufactured, people who are the true believers now gravitate towards the news sources that they like. The mainstream media, which is not as neutral as people think or as it used to be, picks up these news items and normalizes it and makes it as as a legitimate news story. And then you add to that the people who are influencers, whether these are the people who are influencers because they are entertainment industry, they are influencers because they are social media stars, they're influencers because they are sports people. So all of these influencers, they take up these stories and then they propagate it further. And now all of this fake news that originated on someone's laptop at one time or a committee by some place, all of a sudden now gets a huge amount of traction. And the worst part is now it gets picked up by corporate America and the S&P 500 companies, the Standard Poor 500 companies, the big companies in America, and their boardroom, and they act on it. And that is the ecosystem of misinformation. So that it's a long monologue, but I want to turn this over to you for your initial comments now.
So few things, Ajay bhai. I think it's a very well written article. If you go back to the headline of the article, the first line page of the article, you
Sure.
will the second slide in our presentation. It's it, it's very well written, and thank you for presenting it. There are a couple of points I wanted to make about what you said, and based on my observations over the last few years. So it is true that today there is far more gap, a far bigger gap between different opinions, and there's this much darker darker contrast between both, left versus center versus right. Like there you can clearly see that sometimes the information is actually completely opposite of what it used to be. So there is misinformation and disinformation, and the gap between them is much bigger today. Absolutely true. But I, you had mentioned it in the past, there was less disinformation, or there was less fake news, as we call it today. I do not agree with that. I think in the past also there was a significant amount of fake news, probably as much as it is today. But in the past, what was not there was opposing views being easily disseminated online or in the public space. So two things have changed in the last 40 years, 50 years, that has made what you see, we are observing today. Number one, the internet has democratized the sharing of information and events. So, you get more real time information today in the last 30 years than you did before that because of the internet. The second thing that has happened is there is social media in the last 15 years. So internet in the last 30 years and social media in the last 15 years has further democratized and further decentralized the spreading of events and news and opinions about those events. So what has happened is, because now there is a slightly more freer dissemination of information, it is easier to create more different opinions, because now you can share those different opinions and people can have some degree of access to it. So to track back again, 40 years ago there was fake news. 40 years ago there was also one sided opinion making. The only difference now is that now you see the other side much more easily and much more freely. One more thing I wanted to point out is that in the past also these fake news were promoted, but because there was no internet and there was less decentralization, mostly the governments had influence on the spreading of the fake news. So in an era, and it also coincides with the Cold War. So in an era when there was no internet and no decentralization of information sharing and opinion making, most of the fake news was controlled by state agencies, state actors, and their paid narrative builders in the mainstream medias, which was essentially just a small group of print media and TV media. So, Cold War is a perfect example of how both the Soviet as well as in the NATO side freely disseminated disinformation and fake news, but was controlled by their state actors. Now it has decentralized. But coming back to the present times, it brings us to the current day crisis, which is that because there is decentralization of information sharing, the left wing, and which is what the title of this article is, and very aptly put by the Wall Street Journal journalist, the left not only seeks to completely delegitimize opposing views, but it also wants to monopolize it, because it is very uncomfortable that there is decentralization of information sharing that has happened, there is decentralization of opinion making that has happened, and that it doesn't like. So it wants to completely not only spread the news that it wants to spread, of occasionally fake, but it actually wants to stamp out any dissenting opinion that may come out of it.
Absolutely. So the other thing is that there's a lot more of the propagation of the influencer views than in past, because they now at one point, even if the media was biased, only there was only so much space for people to express opinion, whether it was in newspaper or there was TV, the limited news time or limited print space. So the voices were not as amplified. But today, because of Twitter and because of Facebook and all other social media that is out there, I think everyone has, as you said, democratized access to people, and that has increased the amplification of misinformation than it ever existed before. So that I want to now pivot a little bit to left and right wing media. And what I want to talk about is, what does it really mean in terms of in terms of Hindus. I mean, in terms of India, in terms of Hindus, what is left and what is right. So so that I have this my own theory on this, and I want you to opine on it, because it is something that I I have not read somewhere or any of that. I just wrote something up, it's certainly open to debate, and I would like to get your view and our viewers view, and they're free to call in. There is a link, we put it up always. Please call in and talk to us. You're welcome to join us. The left and right, when it comes to India, and I the reason I start, even though we are talking about American Hindu issues, I want to start with India, because a lot of the things that are happening in India or have happened in India in recent past have direct impact of American Hindus. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what defines left and right in India. So left of the political spectrum and right of the political spectrum. Generally, left and right are defined by economic policies, the socio-cultural issues, religious issues, and the issues related to war and peace. I mean, there are other criteria as well, but these are some of the bigger ones, right? So in India, I think when it comes to economic policies, I contend that most of the parties are center or center left or left. There's no truly right economic policy. In terms of economic policy, there's really no uh, right, in terms of right wing, or in terms of truly, you know, uh, capitalist, uh, liberalized economy part. It doesn't exist in India. At least that's my contention. There was only one party in India. There was truly a capitalist party in the history of India that I can think of, and that was the party called Swatantra Party or Swatantra Paksha. It gained some traction in the very early days, and then it just faded away, and then eventually it became part of the Janata Party after 1977 elections. That's the only one I can think of. All the other parties, including the BJP, which is considered to be quote unquote right wing, when it comes to economic policies, is either center. They want more liberalization, but they still want, they would still want public private companies, government owned companies that kind of act like private companies, but they're not truly private. They try to sell off the government stake in some companies, but then they're still left with most of the companies still owned by most of these public private companies still owned by the government. The transportation sector, even though they try to give it in the build operate, and more to the private partners, government still has significant ownership. Even in railways, government is still the largest employer in India. So it's really all left, or center left, or center. When it comes to the social issues, whether it is related to the upliftment of downtrodden and providing opportunities to people who are less fortunate, all of that, I think there are nuances, but there's a general consensus among all the Indian political parties. So, for example, all the political parties support, the reservations based on caste or based on class. Reservations for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, as they're called in India, other backward classes, reservation based on economic, in a lot of places, economic. Uh, you know, uh, you know, uh, Lack of economic opportunities. So people who are poor have certain reservations, women have certain reservations. So all the political parties agree on that, and all of the political parties have elevated people from these generally considered downtrodden classes to the highest political office. So that is really not a defining characteristic. Then you took up so really when it so really it boils down to the religious issues more than anything else, and the war and peace issues, at least on the western border of India, are linked to religious issues. Pakistan and India, I think a lot of the issues are related to religion, whether it's Kashmir issue or any other issue. that Pakistan has picked a fight with India for are all related to religion. Okay, so having said that, so what I would posit, Utsoda, is that all the left and right in Indian context basically boil down to whether it is you're pro-Hindu or you're anti-Hindu. Okay, so those who are left to so if you're a devout Hindu who believes in Hindu ethos or essence of Hindu dharma, or which is Hindutva, you're branded as right wing. And people who we consider to be pseudo secular, who always find who always denigrate Hindus, who always make fun of Hindu scriptures, or uh, you know make or misuse the Hindu symbols, they and denigrate the Hindu deities, are branded as liberals, are branded as you know uh, left wing, or people who are don't believe in religion. Interestingly enough, the Muslims in India, perhaps the most conservative in terms of following the religion, generally align with the left. But this is really no different from how the Muslims in America have aligned with the left, and which is very ironic and very interesting, because if you are an Islamic country, there is no place for left. But in a democratic country like India and like US, the Muslims are aligned with the left. And so, as we go deeper into the analysis of the media, this definition of left and right in context of India, in context of Hindus, is important to know that the defining characteristics is not economic policies, defining characteristics is not the social issues. Defining characteristics really boils down to whether you're pro Hindu, then you're right wing, anti Hindu, you're left wing, very little middle. So, again, a long monologue, but I want to turn this over to you for your thoughts.
So, Ajay bhai, the thing is, uh, in India, what you just observed at the end of the conversation, which is that even though the Islamic or Muslim community is very conservative and is extremely religious, it aligns with the overall left. Uh, that is a global phenomenon. But here is something you have to understand about India's left, center, and right. And this is very important for everybody in the world to understand, because otherwise they will keep bringing up headlines like those of New York Times that they do. There is no real right in India. Okay, the right in India is a very decentralized, very nascent, uh, almost rabble rousing social media presence. There is no real organized right in India. Okay, there is an organized center in India that is in Western terms will be called almost I would I would use the term patriotist. Okay, that's the term I would. It is very nation focused, nation first narrative, and that is derived from the history of the region. If you are not a nation first in that region, then your nation doesn't exist historically.
Well, I
And
mean, thousand years of
thousand
foreign
years of
rule
colonization.
teaches you
Yeah,
to be patriotic at some
yeah.
point,
So
right?
I would coin the term patriotist uh, uh, in to describe that group, and that is actually not right. That is very much centrist in India. So that's what the global media needs to understand. There is actually no organized right in India. It's l- different shades of left. So now comes the important part, which is what are the different lefts in India. So India actually has the very, and this is true about everything else about where Hindus live. It's the diversity of beliefs that Hindus have are known for. Because of the nature of Hindu dharma itself. In India, there's a diversity of left. So you have the traditional ideological left, the left that only reads the books of Marx and blah blah blah, and spout it in university campuses, and that doesn't do anything more than that. Occasionally writes poetry and writes books, and sings songs, and that's the ideological, intellectual left in India. Then you have the violent left, and that is a very unique group that only survives in very few places in the world, maybe in the jungles of Peru, or in some African, leftover African colonized area. Very, very violent, old style, Pol Pot, Stalinist, Maoist left, that, which is the Maoists known as the Naxalites or the Maoists in India. They really believe in the good old days of violent left, where they want to wipe everything out and bring about a revolution, that and achieve whatever they want to achieve using violence. Okay, what they want to achieve keep changes on who their sponsor is at a period of time. So that left in India is very strong and very, very much present. In the last 20 years, they have killed more than 21,000 people. That's not small number. And so that's the violent extremist left. So you have the intellectual left, which reads and spouts poetry, and then you have the extremely violent left. Then you have the democratic left, something again very unique to India. They participate in elections. They have the names Communist Party of XYZ in their name, but they participate in democratic elections. Very much different from what the original ideas of Marxism were. So that you have also in India, the democratic left. And then you have the neo-global left, which is the Swara Bhaskars of India, the Veer Das and the Swara Bhaskars, the celebrity.
Is that the toolkit gang?
It's the toolkit left. So that
Toolkit
left
gang.
is now
I said toolkit gang.
a toolkit gang left. Okay, fine. So that is the new left, globalist left, to correct the term. So you have the intellectual left, old style, reads books, spouts Marx. You have the violent extremist left, the Naxalites, the Maoist, the Bhima Koregaon left, that actually kills people left, right, and center, including tons of poor people. Then you have the democratic left, which is the Communist Party of India, Marxist Communist Party of India, XYZ, you name it, they fight in elections. And then you have the neo-globalist left, which is the Swara Bhaskars and the toolkit gang, which is actually aligned with the global neo-left. And the global neo-left is, hedge fund owners spouting billions of dollars, running agendas and destabilizing nations if they don't like them or their leaders. So you have this entire spectrum of left in India. And then you have the centrist patriotists who just care about the country, nation first. And then you have a few Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts, which is right. So this is the spectrum of ideological space within India that we have to understand and talk about, because otherwise we'll fall prey to the globalist neo-left, which controls the space of public discourse now, and is beginning to control more and more of it. The New York Times, Washington Post of the world, and which is where the Wall Street Journal article that we just discussed in the beginning of this conversation comes from. That article exposes that global neo-left very well.
So I think I want to. This is the maybe you can talk a little bit about this. This slide that that you put together. It tells a story, and I want you to. I wanted to tell this story. So this is the. Let me share this screen again. So tell us about this. So that you're on mute again.
Oh, okay. So there is significant difference between so both sides do misinformation. We have to understand, because of the decentralization of information, as we know, the left has probably got the most monopoly over disinformation. In fact, it doesn't even let it call it disinformation unless a court case appears somewhere and the facts come out. But the right also, the quote unquote, the decentralized nascent right that I spoke about in India, the occasional Facebook, Twitter accounts that are right wing, both sides share disinformation. But there is a difference in what the disinformation is. So the propaganda that the left wing, the globalist, neo-globalist left wing media promotes, or the toolkit gang promotes, is directly targeted at questioning the existence of India as a nation and Hindus as a population segment. Like, they will literally erase you Indian narrative.
Well, that's what the South Asia term is meant to do, right?
Correct. They will
Bracket
literally erase
Hindus
you.
with
And
Indians and Indians with South Asians. So there is no existence of Hindus anymore because they got bracketed as South
yeah,
Asians.
yeah. So there is erasure of entire nations and erasure of
Yep.
entire populations as Hindus in this case. Uh, they will simply cease to consider you as an entity and just keep going on with their propaganda. That's the left wing globalist neo left media, and they have immense amounts of money and resources. The right wing misinformation that comes out of India is primarily individuals who have an exaggerated sense of history and nostalgia about Hindu achievements or India's achievements. So their misinformation comes from a exaggerated sense of history and an exaggerated sense of nostalgia. So, for example, I'll give you an example. So, a Twitter, a Facebook post that was doing the rounds, and and this is a good example of right wing misinformation. And it's for a normal, impartial person to figure out which is more dangerous: the left wing media's misinformation coming out of major platforms with millions of dollars, erasing entire populations and their causes, or whether the fact that a coin that is from a 2,000-year-old coin that shows the king Porus, or a Hindu king, it doesn't actually say it's Porus, but a Hindu king on an elephant fighting a Greco-Bactrian on a horse, uh, and the person which is the Greco-Bactrian actually has it's called sarisa. It's a big long spear trying to hit the king. And this right wing Facebook account actually is interpreting it as the king is holding this this guy on the horse with a chain and claiming, look, this was the Hindu king who had imprisoned Alexander the Great. Whereas in reality, it is purported to be Alexander the Great trying to throw a spear at the Hindu king Puru or Porus. So here you see that the quote unquote right wing Hindutva folks, or not within Hindutva, these guys are just quote unquote decentralized right wing in India.
People who claim to be Hindutva, but
They
not
came to,
necessarily.
yeah.
Probably, they, yeah, okay.
Their
I
sense
think
of misinformation, their sense dissemination of disinformation is
right,
essentially an exaggerated and nostalgic sense of Indian achievement, where they are misrepresenting a coin.
correct.
Whereas compare that to the left wing disinformation, where they are essentially manufacturing riots in India to destabilize entire regions, or manufacturing rapes and murders and killings to just incite violence across the country, and that too at a global scale. Like you will see that headline in BBC or New York Times or some major respected outlet out there. And I think you should look into some of those cases, Ajay bhai. You should
And
present some of those cases.
that is the and here is your other example of the difference between left and right wing media.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I give two more examples of left wing
yeah, please go
or
ahead.
right quote unquote right wing disinformation. Here's another thing. Twitter accounts are saying that right wing quote unquote right wing Twitter accounts are saying that Sonia Gandhi in her book said she hates Hindus, or Sonia hates Hindus. Not Sonia Gandhi, the former president of India and former finance minister of India, home minister of India, Pranab Mukherjee had said, supposedly, and that turns out to be false news. So that's the level of disinformation coming from the quote unquote right, decentralized right in India. Another example, during election times, somebody claiming that the government of India under Prime Minister Modi is going to give 25 lakhs rupees to people. And that's fake news. And these are coming from very decentralized social media accounts. That's the example of right-wing disinformation. Now, Ajay bhai, you present the examples of left-wing disinformation and let people decide, even neutral people decide what the difference is.
Good, and this is another one of the examples that you gave.
Correct.
So yeah, go ahead.
So this is again a sense of misplaced. This is again what the quote unquote nascent right wing in India does. A misplaced sense of identity, where they're saying, "Oh, President of India Abdul Kalam was a jihadi." And this is coming from an individual named Yati Narsimanan. Somebody who's infamous for making these statements. A very insignificant guy with no proper, centralized,
Yeah.
prominent presence, no followers, and so these are like, so the
Well,
difference.
this guy claims to be a Hindutva, a
Yeah,
supporter, but
claims.
he's also the person who actually, it's a shame what he said. He actually called all the all the women politicians, prostitutes. And
Exactly.
I think this is the kind of person that nobody that I know of in the Hindutva movement ever comes and supports.
Exactly.
So,
Or even if
yeah,
they get associated with him by chance, because he claims to support other Hindu causes, the
yeah,
moment they see what the agenda of this individual is, they very quickly disassociate with him.
yeah. And more people know about him, the more and more people dislike him.
Correct.
Um, okay, all right. So the that um, so what is the so I picked up a few things where why what is driving this, and what is really driving it is especially when it comes to Hindus, the media, the mainstream media, especially in America. I mean, it's true in India as well, but we are talking always in American context, American Hindu context. And the mainstream media has built this narrative in a very deliberate and a planned manner. This is a job advertisement by the New York Times. Okay, the job description. So this job description, where they are looking for a business correspondent in India. Now you would think that you're looking for a business correspondent. You'd ask for journalistic credentials. You'd ask for you'd make the job description as to what the job is going to entail, what you're going to do, things like that. But New York Times is so ideologically driven that this is what, and so anti-Hindu, I might add, that this is what the job advertisement says. India's future now stands at a crossroad. Mr. Modi is advocating a self-sufficient, muscular nationalism. Now you doing your self-defense counts as muscular. They don't realize that Hindus were enslaved for 1,000 years. They're just emerging uh, from this slavery as for the first time in 1,000 years as independent society, independent nation, and it is constantly under threat on two sides of the border by two well-armed adversaries. And you want to have all the people who are your citizens to be aware of that, and that now counts as a muscular nationalist on the country's Hindu majority. Remember, Hindus did not ask for the division of India. Okay? Hindus were perfectly happy to live in a multi religious society. That vision puts him at odds with the interfaith multicultural goals of modern India's founders. No, the vision of India was actually interpreted by people who sought Pakistan as an Islamic country and got it. It is not the India's multicultural goals. India's multicultural goals were quashed the day Pakistan was founded. The government's growing effort to police online speech and media discourse have raised difficult questions about balancing issues of security and privacy with free speech. Now, a commercial speech, a speech that is made as a result of commercial interest, does not have the same protection as free speech or as a political speech. And a lot of the speech that is coming out in India, and we don't want to name names, are have funding that drives that political speech. That is commercial speech for most part. It is not free speech. And then it goes on to say technology is both help and hindrance. So the point I'm trying to make is not just this advertisement. The point I'm trying to make is look at the kind of journalists that New York Times is looking for in India. There's an inbuilt Hindu hate in this job description. Okay, I'll give you a couple of more examples, but I want you to opine on this particular ad if you have anything to add.
No, I just want to say that that's why I was pointing out that when it comes to the global neo left, the globalist neo left, they this is a trend that is not just in India. This is a trend that's around the world. Any population segment, any leader who represents those population segment, doesn't fall in line with the agenda of the new globalist left, they will target them. I mean, to the point that they would target their own also if they fall out of line. I mean, a very good example of it is this, quite influential talk show host from HBO called Bill Maher. Bill Maher is an example of a guy where he was in line with the global neo left for the longest period of his career. He still is on 80% of the issues that they have.
But
But
he's also to some extent a libertarian
correct. So
in
the
some
20% that he doesn't fall in line with, they will completely deplatform him for the everything, because
or tried to at least. He's still not been
yeah,
deplatformed yet.
they're trying,
They're trying.
because he just doesn't fall in line with the 20% that the global neo left has to run with. And that is where the aggressiveness and the monopoly factor comes in, where you literally have a boundary, and if you stray out of that boundary line, you will be your entire self will be deplatformed. And this is a good example of that. And they seek places like India or any other part of the world for this kind of open bias, because they seek to control minds and influence minds. And India, with its population of 1.3 billion people, with a youth population of nearly almost half of it, has that cachet of minds that they want to tap into for the next generation of their agenda.
Yeah. So that, let me go on to the next example, and this I think we have mentioned it long time ago. But this is the kind of journalist that NPR employs to report on Hindus. Furqan Khan, was a reporter for National Public Radio. I know a lot of viewers of our show and a lot of Hindus in general in America end up supporting because it's a public broadcaster. Furqan Khan actually wrote on Twitter that if Indians give up Hinduism, they will also be solving most of their problems, what with all the piss drinking and dung worshipping. Furqan Khan, a reporter for National Public Radio, she actually wrote this. Now, these are the kinds of people that the mainstream media employs to report on Hindus. She was reporting on the India's Constitutional Amendment Act, which gave preferential citizenship to people who are fleeing persecution in the neighboring countries, to Hindus who are fleeing so Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Jains, Buddhists who are fleeing the surrounding countries. And of course, Furqan Khan, eventually this became a big issue. Furqan Khan was fired. But these are the kinds of people that the mainstream media employs in India, or to report on Hindus specifically. Usada, before I go to the next example, thoughts?
Well, this is not just one. Furqan Khan just represents one of the many people, and this is a trend in the left, in global left, globally, in all over the world. They, because they are all aligned with the narratives that many of these media houses promote, their personal hatred and personal disposition towards entire segments of population, entire communities, entire countries, which borders on, in this case, absolute hate. There is nothing else that can describe this. Still, they are allowed spaces, still they're given salaries, still they're employed and promoted on these neo-globalist left platforms, because again, this points to two things: that these outlets, these media houses, these ideologues sitting and making these decisions, really believe that they control the narrative to the point that they will be perfectly fine. Nobody will hold them responsible, even if they allow complete haters a platform, as long as those haters are running their stated agenda. So that's again an example of their own belief in the monopoly that they have on information. And the Furqan Khan is a very good example of that. I mean, NPR probably believed that it has so much control and so much moral high ground to present any of the narratives it presents on India, that it even allowed somebody as hateful as Furqan Khan to use its platform, as long as it was Furqan was doing her job, or which was the agenda of NPR. I
Yeah.
mean, eventually, I think once this became a huge deal, they deplatformed her. They were forced to deplatform her. but they didn't even apologize or say anything that was, you know that really pulled back on their other agenda items that they were pushing.
Absolutely. So that here is, you know, Washington Post, and Washington Post headline for this uh, is this is the editorial. Actually, it's not even a op-ed piece. It's labeled as opinion, but if you look at the head on top of opinion, it says the Post's view. So this is the official view of the Washington Post. India's cruelty to its critics, uh, and this is not from last week. This is one of the older ones. India's cruel to its critics show the deterioration of the world's largest democracy. This is talking about Father Stan Swami. So that this is the person who was in jail, uh, awaiting a trial, and he passed away in jail um, for a for a very violent act and a conspiracy to commit even more violence. He was a well-known Naxalite, and people who don't know it, that's the Maoist fraction that considers even the Communist Party of India Marxist to be, you know, less than, to be, less than optimally communist. I guess is that the way to put
More
it?
importantly, directly self-claimed death of more than 21,000 people in the last 20 years. That's more than 1,000 people a year.
A year, and these people
These,
have violent armed
yeah,
struggle going on in
yeah,
several parts of India,
yeah,
right? And
yes.
Washington Post, owned by the richest person in the world, is is advocating for the Naxalites who want to bring down anyone who even makes a middle class living. Okay, why? Well, the reason is that as we were talking about the journalists who are, who are by these newspapers, whether it's New York Times or, NPR, the Washington Post has a journalist from Mumbai, Rana Ayub, and Rana Ayub is, regular contributor to the Washington Post, and all you have to do is look at the headlines of the news items that of the op-ed pieces that she has written. Why an Indian film's success at the box office should worry us all. Now, this is about a new movie called Suryavanshi that came out a couple of weeks ago, and this is a thriller, and it's about you know victory against, or a battle against, a fight against, or battle against terrorists. And that offended Rana Ayub and her ilk. A famous movie star in India, his son, a famous movie star's son, uh, ended up uh, getting busted for carrying drugs. And so in a narcotics case, as he was a recreational user, I guess. I don't know yet fully because it's still being investigated. But he got busted with drugs at a cruise at a party, in a cruise ship. And Rana Ayub, obviously, was not happy because the movie star is a Muslim, and Rana Ayub has to run to the rescue, whether it's right or wrong. Um, uh, India's Prime Minister Modi withdrew some of the three farm acts that he had promulgated a year or so ago, and there was a lot of we talked a lot about it, about the toolkit activism. And Rana Ayub, you know, to her typical style, came back and said toolkit one. Rana Ayub again. This was a completely fake news, and Rana Ayub again. Tripura is burning with hate. India can find excuse to persecute people who stand up for the rights of Muslims. And eventually, it was proved that a lot of the news coming out of Tripura was actually manufactured misinformation or fake news. Some more news headlines from, or op-ed piece headlines from Rana Ayub. India keeps going after journalists like me as Modi visits the US. It's time to hold him accountable. A timeline of hate, intimidation, and injustice in Modi's India. The Indian government continues to harass journalists. I'm facing prison over a tweet. So this is Rana Ayub, and this is the person who the Washington Post keeps promoting as a way of promoting the anti-Hindu narrative all the time. What do you think? So you're on mute again.
Yeah. I'm getting. So this is something that I don't need to talk further about Rana Ayub's achievements, because yes, to be honest, people like Rana Ayub are feeling happy today after the three farm laws were, because they did make the toolkit, they did propaganda, and this is a very good example of how propaganda works. They won. They forced the prime minister of the largest nation of the country to pull back laws that were approved by the democratic process, and that would have helped 80 to 90% of the people it was meant to help. So she did win against democracy, and so Rana Ayub obviously has the right to brag. Putting that aside, it is important to understand why Rana Ayub is where she is, and that is why what is the most important part of this conversation. Ajay bhai. Rana Ayub is not there because back 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, 15 years ago, she was the one who targeted the then chief minister of Gujarat, Narendra Modi, as an quote unquote author activist. So she was not a well-known journalist then. She was picked up from her position of being a perpetual critique of then chief minister of Gujarat, Modi. And as Modi's career rose and Modi became the prime minister of India, she was elevated along with Modi, so that she can continue to target Modi with the most credibility that quote unquote the Washington Post of the world felt was needed. And she checked all the boxes. She was non-hijabi Muslim, Sunni Muslim. She had perpetually targeted Modi for 16 years. She was a woman. That's all you need. That's the narrative building part that you need to care about. The rest, who cares about facts? That's the most important part here. Who cares about facts? As long as you have checked the boxes about identity, you can literally just do anything you want and you will be given a free pass, as long as it serves the larger globalist agenda of the global left. And this is a very good example of that. I mean, any other person like Rana Ayub would have been sued for defamation like a million times over in any other place.
Yeah. Hey, so that this is the you know these are the headlines from the New York Times, and every single headline the New York Times publishes has an anti-Hindu bias. This is the one. All of these are about the how the Muslims are being persecuted in India, even though India is one of the largest Islamic population in the world, and there are more Muslims living in India
not just
than
that not just that, the population of Muslims in India has nearly doubled in the last 70 years, nearly doubled. Okay.
and compared
Everywhere
to
else in the
uh,
region,
com-
everywhere else in the region, in every other country around India,
yeah,
which is Muslim majority, the population of Hindus has halved to what it was. Or in
no,
the
less
case of
than
Pakistan,
So the
in the
Pakistan
case
is
of
only two
Pakistan, it
percent
is less
Hindus
than
left.
half. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Pakistan has only 2% Hindus left. What was it
yeah,
when during the independence?
yeah, it was close to 12%. So
twelve
it is
percent,
actually one sixth of what it
one
was
sixth.
than in
What was the population of Hindus in Afghanistan in 1947?
correct. So but
There's
the
no
thing
Hindu
is that
left anymore.
there is this is the assumption. Again, this is where the bias of these globalists, they have already erased Hindus to the point where their existence is irrelevant to their news making. The suffering of the Hindus is irrelevant to their news making. So what they are doing essentially is going along the lines of what their agenda is after the erasure of Hindus. So since Hindus don't matter to them because they are not part of the globalist left's agenda for the future. If you declare yourself as a non-Hindu or anti-Hindu, you will fit into their agenda. You will be promoted thereafter. That is the play here.
And it's not just the American mainstream media. Here is a publication called Frontline. It comes from the same group that publishes the Hindu, ironically, based in Chennai. And they talk about the dismantling global Hindutva conference, and they talk about unmasking Hindutva, and they say paradox of global Hindutva, benign Brahminism, capturing social media platforms. So again, the narrative is, if you look at the picture with RSS Swayamsevaks carrying lathis, which is taught in RSS shakas for self protection, after all that Hindus have gone through for 1,000 years, and this is considered a a militant Hindu face of Hindu dharma, a self defense, and also they have a clever way of inserting casteism into the narrative and inserting what Hindus do on the social media in the same narrative. So very cleverly designed. But you can see from New York Times and Washington Post to NPR to all the papers in India. And I'm giving only one example here. The takeover of the left when it comes to building a narrative against Hindus is complete.
Correct.
Okay,
And
and that is the real message here, that the Hindu while in America it is still a newspaper article in a mainstream media that can actually challenge the left. In India, when it comes to Hindus in America and in India, this takeover of
I mean, this
misinformation by
this
left
is
is
not
complete.
to not to not to, and this is a topic that we should have a whole Hindu lounge on for the last 100 years or so. And this is a direct example of colonialism. the the word Brahminism is actually a distortion of the word Brahmanism, which is Brahman as in the philosophical concept of an absolute divinity that originally the Vedantic Hindu philosophies profess. So the word Brahmanism, which was the initial word that was used by the colonialists when they were studying post Vedantic Hindu Dharma, which was the most commonly practiced Hindu Dharma in the 15th, 16th century when they first colonized Indian subcontinent, they used the word Brahmanism. But fast forward 200 years, now the global left and their Indian left brotherhood, along with their Islamist friends, have changed the word of Brahmanism, which means the belief in the absolute Brahman, to Brahminism, which is to point it to a identity of a jati. And that is one of the biggest distortions and disinformations that can be presented out there, but most Hindus don't even recognize that.
Absolutely. Um, Mahendra Sapa writes, or sorry, I think it's AT, writes that Rana Ayub wrote a book about Gujarat riots, and Supreme Court actually ruled it was a work of fiction. Yes, but um,
See, that is
it,
that is not it. As long as Rana Ayub continues to
as long
target.
as Rana Ayub got what she wanted out of it, I think Utsoda, you're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
No, I'm
Yeah,
saying
go
as
ahead.
long as Rana Ayub continues to target Prime Minister Modi and Hindus in general and deplatforms them, it is irrelevant whether the book she wrote was termed as a work of fiction by the Supreme Court of India. See, that is the part that is the main purpose of this having this conversation, Tyagi ji, that to the globalist left or to the quote unquote left media out there, whether it is in America, India, or any other part of the world, it's not just disinformation that is important, it's the monopoly of the disinformation that is important. So they will not even talk about the part that you just pointed about because they
Correct.
want to monopolize the disinformation.
Yeah, we are, this is and this article is so apt so that it really brings to light that there's misinformation coming on both the sides, but from both the sides. But the left has now, when it comes to Hindus, the left has the already achieved the monopoly. They're still trying to achieve when it comes to US. And here is the concluding part of the article from the Wall Street Journal from Gerard Baker that we are talking about, trying to come up with what we are doing here in this. For people who just joined us, we are analyzing the article from by Gerard Baker about misinformation and how left is trying to monopolize the misinformation. And we are saying that when it comes to Hindus, the left has already monopolized, for large parts, already monopolized the misinformation, and they are deplatforming anyone who is pro-Hindu, who is on the right, and taking them out of the arena of public opinion. This is the concluding part of the Gerard Baker article. It says the recent brouhaha over Facebook whistleblower who exposed internal debate at the company about the content on its platform emphasizes this. It underscores how important it is for the conservatives not to be tempted down the primrose path of regulatory redress. It is not the harm that company may be doing to the teenage girls' self-esteem that's driving the mainstream media's criticism. It is the harm that the plethora of conservative news sites and the commentators that dominate Facebook's newsfeed is doing to the self-esteem of corporate media. Okay. And then it goes on to say, this is the ultimate objective of those who have fed us so much felicity for so long. They want the primary channels of digital information, not only social platforms, but search too. Remember, Google tweaks the search algorithm to present what they want to present. And many times it is, and some of the political views are, not, not presented if the algorithm was not tweaked to be epistemic, epistemically closed as the rest of the media is currently. Okay, and they live in a self-contained world where only one sort of information counts as misinformation, and they intend to get us all into that world. Then, by their own impeccable Orwellian logic, there'll be no misinformation, only truth duly enforced. So that, look, we have never claimed to be non-partisan in terms of our Hindu advocacy, not political partisanship, but when it comes to Hindu partisanship, we are unapologetically Hindu. And yet, in this particular 1 hour show that we did, we talked about misinformation coming from the Hindu right, and we presented the misinformation coming from the left, Hindu hating left. But if you look at what comes out of New York Times, Washington Post, NPR, uh, and media like Hindu and other Indian media, it fits perfectly the last paragraph, and that is, we will give you misinformation, we'll give it to you enough number of times. Once you will take the information, it will become, we will shut you down, our misinformation will become mainstream, and then our misinformation will count as truth. Okay, that is where the left wants us to go. Hindu hating left wants us to go. Your thoughts?
No, I agree with you, and that was, the point we were making, that there is misinformation from both sides, but there is only monopolizing efforts from one side, and that is the global left, media out there. Uh, in the case of India, the situation is even worse, because at least in America, there are platforms on the quote unquote right which disseminate information and misinformation both. But in the case of India, there is no right. There is different shades of left, including the toolkit global left, and then there is the patriotist or the centrist. The right is just social media accounts yapping away about real and perceived threat perception. So there in India, the impact of this monopolization of left wing media is far more, because it has all the platforms and controls all the narratives.
And we are going to continue to speak about this. We are going to continue monitoring it and highlight every single week. We are going to keep highlighting what the anti-Hindu diatribe that goes on in the mainstream media. So with that, Utsada, we come to the end of this segment, um, and we go to our regularly scheduled segment. The first one, of course, is our the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week. And for that, Utsada, we today have a very special guest. and let me bring him online, and we'll talk about that. And then I've created one slide for him as well. So I want to I want to introduce Kanchan Banerjee, and Kanchan. I go back a long way with Kanchan. He is one of the co-founders, along with Gokul Kunnath and me, for Hindu Students Council. He has been very prominent when it comes to Hindu advocacy, Hindu activism, Hindu Samaj Seva or social work in America. He has been doing this for a very long time, since mid late 80s and early 90s. He was very active, and today he is leading an organization called GIBV, and he is he's very engaged in helping the Hindus of West Bengal who were who were killed and rendered homeless and maimed and raped and persecuted after the elections in West Bengal. So before we go there, and Kanchana, hold on, we start this particular segment with a special music. So we'll go to that special music, and then we will talk about the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week, and Kanchan will explain what this organization is doing and what we are talking about. So with that, here is the music for the day for Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं.
And with that, I want to welcome Kanchan Banerjee and talk about give some introductory remarks, and then talk about the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week, the organization that he's advocating for this week, and that is Matilal Bharat Tirtha Seva Mission Ashram. Sorry, Kanchana, please go ahead and talk about this particular organization a little bit. About yourself first, and then about the organization, and you can also talk a little bit about GIBV.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ajay Bhai. Happy to be on this program, and thank you for inviting me. You can hear me,
Yes,
Ajay?
yes, all
Yeah.
good, all good.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking to go to a laptop, but in, I, it is easier now. um, and Utsav Bhai is there. He also knows what's going on in West Bengal. So we'll come to that. So GIVV is a global Indians for Bharat Vikas. It was launched in 2013 with the blessings from none other than Mahesh Bhai, Dr. Mahesh Mehtaji. And also we got blessings from our Prime Minister Modi ji also, before he became Prime Minister. So we formed this organization to do seva work, development work in rural India, empowering villages. Uh, so it's been several years. We started our journey, and we are working in multiple villages in multiple states in Bharat. Um, Other than that, I also am, as you, most of you probably, I don't know the audience fully, but most of you know that, as Ajay Bhai said, I have been involved with Vishwa Hindu Parishad work since 1986, and we started Hindu Students Council in 1990 formally. Before that, Ajay Gokul, they were also having other informal activities and discussions. So in 1990, officially formed a Hindu Students Council, which has about 40 plus chapters today, active chapters in US and Canada. Um, Apart from that, I am also involved in a Center of Excellence in Boston. It's called Boston Center of Excellence, where we are trying to bring together experts and scientists from all over the world to do original research on yoga, Ayurveda, and modern medicine integration. Because the way the healthcare system is happening in America, the price of healthcare is going up so much, and the quality is not not quality is not as much as you would expect. So we are doing some research with 13 universities or institutes in America and 4 5 aims and others. But in Boston, we are actively working with Harvard Medical School and MIT Media Lab. So that's briefly about me. Uh, it's probably I spoke more than necessary, but
No, no,
I
no.
thought,
It's all good. People
uh,
have to get to know your work. You're doing amazing work, and it's good for
okay,
people to know that.
thank you. Uh,
So, talk
so
to us about this one, this organization and what you're doing here.
so 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, we started a group in US called Bangla Abar, Bengal again, meaning reviving Bengal's heritage and Bengal's role in the development of Bharat, as well as helping the people of West Bengal to rise economically, and many other different issues are there. So we were working in Calcutta. We have a branch in Calcutta, Bangla, and then we were working with many groups. And this Matilal group we came across at that time, but didn't have much work. As you know, after the election, before the election, there's a lot of hope that a BJP government will come, there'll be change, and there'll be a lot of opportunities for investments, economic development, and certain things that are happening in Bengal. As you know, I don't know, Ajay, if it is a forum to say about
Please go
demography.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
so as you know, officially in West Bengal, the Muslim population is officially 24%, but actually it is more than 32 right now, because of infiltrations and many other factors. So that demography is rapidly changing. Several districts in West Bengal are Muslim majority. It's not that because of Muslims are bad or anything. I'm not trying to say that. It is the fundamentalist Muslim leaders that are taking hold of West Bengal through Mamata Banerjee's party TMC. There are so many goons there. They have joined TMC, and many of them are Islamists, Islamic fundamentalists. They are roaming around, and there are a lot of privileges given to this particular community, mostly because of vote bank. So what happened? We were hoping if BJP came to power, there will be hopefully some changes in this area, some strategies for sealing the borders, and some other activities we could do. Closing illegal madrasas, maybe NRCs. All this could have happened if BJP came to power. Apart from the economic development that our Prime Minister Modi ji, Startup India, and so many great projects our Indian government has launched, the benefits of that is not reaching Bengal because Mamata Banerjee is blocking everything, or misappropriating, using her own name that, oh, I have introduced, but they're taking the money from center. So we were hoping if BJP came to power, things would be different, if not entirely different. But politics is politics. But unfortunately, debacle happened, and after the election results came out that BJP did not get more than 70 seats out of 294. There was a chance that BJP could get 200 plus seats and form the government. I'm not getting into the reason causes for that, but it happened. And immediately after that, killing, rape, burning houses, and you cannot imagine what was going on for about 7 days non-stop. 7,000 reported rape cases, 50 gang rapes, and rape cases are normally all reported, but this is a document we have access to. About 50 people died. None of the media in Bengal were allowed to publish any of this news. News leaked out by only few media people like Republic, and social media. And then again, there were clams on people who were posting on social media. Their Facebook was closed, and so forth. So then, about I would say about 100,000 people became homeless. because they had this fear that they're going to be killed or attacked. So they left, and they went. Where could they go? To their families, in different parts of Bengal. But even when they went to their families, they were hunted, and beaten up or killed. Um, Even a 10-year-old girl was raped, gang raped, and so many such cases. Then Assam took about 7,000 people. They gave shelter to many of them. They're still there in Bengal, different parts. We offered shelters. Even our Sangha office became a shelter in Calcutta, and we were, trying to support any way possible. I was in Calcutta, in Bengal during the election. I traveled in 12 districts, and I got many personal. I gave my phone number to many people when I was meeting people. Every 15 minutes, I would get two, three calls at the same time. Dada, do something. Dada, do something. Talk to Modi ji. Talk to Amit Shah ji. It was a horrible 7 days nightmare we had gone through. So we started to give some resistance, but again, police would catch them. So then we diverted our attention to do seva to these people. So first of all, the Amphan, the storm came. Many of them were already homeless. COVID, people are jobless. There's no business. Then came this. So we decided to raise funds to support them, their families. There are some families, they came home and they found that everything is stolen, including their cooking pots. So even they could not uh, uh, food. Even they were given rice and other things. So far, since the May, we have raised good amount of money from many different parts of the world, and we have helped close to 50,000 families with food, medicines for the kids, for the women, whatever we could do. We also raise money within India, and support it through this organization that Ajay mentioned, Matilal. They are very, very reputed organization. They are doing seva work for many, many years, and it's FCRA cleared. And then what we do normally, we have this Bangla Award in registered in New Jersey. It's an also 501c organization. We have collected donation through that, and then we transfer the funds to Matilal organization in Kolkata. And they they are, and now they also distribute to our informal volunteers everywhere. Every district we have volunteers. They are working, and things are settled kind of, but many people are still afraid to go back. Many people are forced to join TMC. They join TMC, surrendered, and then now they're safe, at least physically speaking. That's what is happening. There's a part two to this story. Is that we also launched some activities that to empower people in Bengal for job creation and small businesses. So with MSME, as many of you may know, micro and small and medium enterprises organization that central government has, and Startup India, and then Khadi India. So these are uh, organizations, institutes. They provide funds, training, and other facilities to start small businesses. So throughout Bengal, now we are launching many such small businesses without any support from West Bengal government. There'll be some initial um, approval and all this from the state government, but we have made some connections there also. So we just launched a huge project on fruit processing in North Bengal, where they have pineapples, mangoes, and lychees. So they're going to create a company about 2 crore, but then again they need seed money, which 10% minimum, which is they don't have. So these are the twofold work. So there are many other small businesses we are starting throughout Bengal, and we are creating a fund for that. So first part, my appeal to all the Hindu brothers and sisters in this forum is, if you can help in any way, first to support these families. And we have very transparent process. If you want direct report from them, we can do that, or from the organization. Any amount is welcome, because average we are raising about 4 to 6 lakhs average since then per month, and it's very small amount for NRIs. They are sometimes we feel like, oh my God, we 5 lakhs is not a huge amount, but we still struggle to raise because there are so many causes. Everybody donates for some cause or the other, so this is an additional appeal. So those of you would be interested, please do donate, and details Ajay Bhai has, and he can always share. And the second part is if any one of you would like to support these small businesses, and they'll be all legal and completely transparent processes. If anyone wants to support any friends in Bengal to start a business, maybe the seed money, maybe 1 lakh rupees, 50,000 rupees. There are many fisheries actually. They are trying to do a lot of fishing, fishery business, spices, and one other area we are focusing on, as you know, the halal economy is growing rapidly throughout the world, which is $3 trillion economy. Even the computers are having halal stamp. It's not just food products, not the meat. Halal is now everywhere, even in Boston, in Calcutta, rice, atta, everything has halal shop. So in order to uh, counter that and to help our own friends to start their own business, we have come up with a brand called Sanatani. I'll share that with you. Sanatani brand. Anything we produce through these efforts will have a Sanatani brand, and will go beyond that. Any store would like to have the Sanatani brand, we will allow them to use so that people know this is not a halal shop. This is a Hindu shop or Jain shop. So we are working in that area, and any one of you would like to help and support would be great uh, help. And I that's all I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, I can answer. But things are horrible in Bengal. This election, this 2021 election, 80 seats out of 294 was were decided by their destiny was decided by Muslim votes. Next election, which is 2025, 26, there'll be 120 seats out of 294 will be deciding factor would be Muslim votes. But then after that, the one after 26 is 31. It will be about 150, 40 to 50 seats will be decided by Muslims. And then, of course, there will be demands for Sharia, there will be demands for separation, separate state, and all this is going to happen. If we cannot do something today to empower our Hindu brothers and sisters, Bengal is going Kashmir way. So there's no choice. So that's all I wanted to say today. I'll stop here and thank you all for.
Thank you,
Um,
Kanchanda. Thank you for this, deep insight into what is going on in West Bengal. We have had multiple shows on Bengal, but adding your perspective was very helpful. And I think this is a really worthy cause. And I want to call upon all our viewers to actually go to Hindu Abar's website,
Bangla Abar,
Bangla
Bangla.
Abar website, sorry, Bangla Abar website, and make a donation. As Kanchanda said, this is very transparent. It is They're a 501c3 organization in US, registered in New Jersey. They also do the money. They donate the money through that organization through to Matilal Bharat Tirtha Seva Mission Ashram, and you can see on the screen. Not only they have the Swift and all that, they are also an FCRA compliant, registered organization. So, and knowing Kanchanda and knowing other people who are involved with this, I can assure you that the money is not misused, and they will make sure that every penny that is donated will go towards a good cause. So, Kanchada, I want to thank you very much. I know you have a busy day, but thanks for taking time
Thank
out and presenting this. I think you're doing a lot of work, and I think these are the times when all the Hindus, regardless of their political ideologies, regardless of their way of worship, regardless of any of that, they should come together and help a fellow Hindu, and not just Hindus, right? I mean, I would say that even people who are
everybody.
Christians, who are Muslims, if this is a humanitarian crisis, this is a These are humanitarian issues or human rights issues, and more than that, it is an issue where you're really helping people survive in their day-to-day life and empower them to become independent economically and financially independent. And everyone should see value in this and support this. So, Kanchana, once again, thank you for joining. Thank you for making an appeal. And we will continue to do the best we can to support the cause that you have taken up.
Thank you so much
Okay.
and for having me, and namaste to everyone on this
Namaste.
call.
Thank you for
I'll
joining.
sign off.
Yep.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
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 And with that, we go to the next regularly scheduled segment of Hindu Lounge. And Utsada, I'm sorry, I don't have the music ready this time, and I know how disappointed you're going to be. I don't have all the special tunes that I play, but I assure you, by next week I will have everything. So my apologies to you for not having the wonderful little clips of music that you, as they're called loops, that you like. And but I please, be assured that
No, Ajay bhai, I don't like them. I don't like them. Just
I
so you
do
know.
have Plan B, and I can play a little bit of Plan B, and see if maybe you like it. So I'm always afraid of like not meeting your high standards, but
No, no.
here
I
is a
think you
Plan
have
B.
Plan B just so that I begin to like Plan A. Okay, please go ahead. Let me see what you have as Plan B.
So can you hear it? And with
Looks
that,
like
so that
looks like a movie soundtrack from a Patrick Swayze movie from early 90s. Ajay bhai.
you didn't like it. That means there's always.
I didn't say that.
No, 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 no.
I like Patrick Swayze.
I heard that you didn't like it. So let me play a little bit of hip hop music for you if you that's what you like. Is it playing? Yeah, wait.
That's still late 80s, early 90s Patrick Swayze, Ajay bhai. I think you
Yeah.
need to update your movie
This
soundtrack
is not
library.
coming. This is the default that is there in Restream. So
Ajay bhai, I have nothing against. We should actually have a Hindu Lounge show about critiquing different genres of music from different time periods, and I'm gonna make fun of them.
see, I like your. As I said, 80 weeks, and you have developed a good sense of humor. You were so serious when we started this, and now you're opening up
Ajay
a
bhai,
little
I'm
bit.
still serious.
That's the
You're
problem.
missing the
I'm trying to
sarcasm.
change that. All right, so that the Hindu good news of the week. Here we go. The Hindu good news of the week, Utsada, is, and let me reshare my screen. You will like this Hindu good news of the week because this is a bittersweet good news, and I want you to opine on this. I'm sure you have seen this news item. So, as you know, so the and we, sometimes we gravitate towards India a little bit much, but I think this is a worthy news. So that this you can see the screen, right? Or you can't. Oh, you cannot, and you're on mute. But here
I
is the
don't.
screen. Oh, so that this is the so in India, there is a every Friday when there is a namaz that happens, and that namaz usually where the Muslims usually get together and pray. Very very noble of them to be doing that. Only thing is that this usually happens on public land, on the roads and streets and everything else. And uh, there have been a growing opposition to blocking of roads and taking up the public space for doing essentially what is a private activity, which should be done inside the mosques and inside the temples or churches or wherever people practice their religion, and not on the streets and in the public parks, and impose on the other people. So one of the gurudwaras in Delhi, Gurugram is older Gurgaon, and is extended Delhi. It's a suburb of Delhi now because Delhi has expanded so much. It's part of the Delhi metropolitan region. One of the gurudwaras offered the Muslim community to come and pray inside of the Gurudwara. Now, this is ironic because uh, the Islamic community in Delhi does not really recognize even the existence of is a Hindu or Sikh and all of that. And during the partition of India, the community that bore the brunt of the attack of uh, in what is now Pakistan were Sikhs and Hindus, but a lot of Sikhs because it was Punjab, partition of Punjab, that caused a lot of mayhem over there, and most of the Hindus and Sikhs had to flee. In fact, in some cities in Punjab, the Hindu population was 40 to 45%, where it is now 2% or zero. And so this one leader in a guru offered a place for doing namaz, and obviously there was a huge outcry from his own congregation, and he eventually had to withdraw that. So bittersweet good news. First of all, I don't even know Soda why it came to this stage. It's easy to speculate because the way the politics is going on in Punjab, it's easy to speculate. There's a lot of there's a lot of Pakistani intervention there. Pakistan had a the Khalistani project, which is seeking a separate for Sikhs. Project was initiated by Pakistani Secret Service and the politicians right after their defeat in 1971, and they worked on this since 1971. So 50 years they worked on this as a project, and they put a lot of resources in trying to create this kind of feeling. But I was heartened by the fact that the congregation at that Gurudwara put a stop to this. Okay, your thoughts?
I think this is again a very good example of toolkit activism. The whole thing, including the desire to occupy public squares in a secular country and take it over for namaz as a show of uh, public expression of Islamic domination, a, is a trend that has it's very common in the Western countries now. Western countries don't know how to deal with it, except for France, which is learning to deal with it very fast. Uh, but in India, this was manufactured. The whole thing was propped up to instigate Hindu-Muslim divide. Uh, the entire presence, entire injection of quote unquote Gurdwara into it was to further fuel the Hindu-Sikh divide and exacerbate the Khalistani issues, the sentiments of Khalistan in that region. Luckily, history is on the side of truth in this case. The entire community, that is the Sikh community, their entire history is a history of struggle for dignity and self-respect against radical Islam. Uh, there's Khalsa Panth, which is the last segment of the Sikhi philosophy, darshan, uh, is geared to not just ideologically and philosophically counter radical Islam, but also physically do so. So it is very hard. Pakistan can try another 50 years. It's very hard to lie and spread falsehood to this degree. Maybe they will be able to influence some Sikhs who are detached from Sikhi and the philosophy that Sikh darshans profess in Western countries, maybe in Canada, US, UK. They can use propaganda to misguide them, but that's not going to happen in India. Most Sikhs in India know their history. Most Sikhs in India know what their existence means as a darshan. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think this was going to happen. The toolkit media is going to promote it and try to make the most out of it, just like anything else.
Yep.
But I actually wasn't even considering it a big deal because I think this this is everyday everyday happening in India.
And so that with that, we come to the final segment of the show today. And the final segment of the show is our most popular segment. Excuse me, our most popular segment of the show, and that is the Hindu hater or Hindu dveshi or Hindu phobe of the week. Usada, you have picked the Hindu phobe of the week this week, and I want you to talk about this because this is a very sad news. Tell us about the Hindu phobe of the week or Hindu hater of the week.
So this is again another example of fishing in troubled waters. In this case, the former External Affairs Minister Salman Khurshid, considered to be one of the more educated leaders of the Muslim
So
community.
that in a Hindu, I mean, if you look at what New York Times and Washington Post and all of them say about India, how is a Muslim from India becoming India's foreign minister or equivalent to a secretary of state? Uh, Secularism is. I thought secularism was dead in India for 50 years.
Okay, so Salman Khurshid was not a external affairs minister under Prime Minister Modi, which is what most of the Western globalist left media targets, who they target. He was external affairs minister of the previous Congress government. But what is interesting is that this is the same Salman Khurshid who, along with a very Hindutva leader, former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, defended India at the United Nations in Geneva on the issue of Kashmir, and that was in the early 90s. So that there is what has happened over the past is that the leaders like Salman Khurshid have become increasingly marginalized, and within the Muslim community itself, the more radicalized leaders like the Owaisis have taken central space, and that is because the toolkit left wing media promotes them, because it creates dissension within India. So people like Salman Khurshid are getting increasingly marginalized, and the best way they think they can come back and occupy mind space within the Muslim communities of India is to become radicalized themselves or present themselves as more radicalized. So, here is a book that he tries to compare Hindutva to ISIS and Boko Haram, which essentially is no different from what the Rana Ayub gang is doing. So that, I think, is the reason why I would call him as the Hindu hater of the week. And the funny thing is that even another prominent Muslim leader from Kashmir, Ghulam Nabi Azad, who also is from the same political party, was from the same political party as Salman Khurshid, actually challenged him and said, this kind of disinformation is what is leading to, what we just discussed, fake news and hatred. So, it's good that Salman Khurshid has been challenged by members of his own community from his own party, and it's a good thing. But he still, I would call him the Hindu hater of the week because of the selfishness with which he has uttered these words, which are not true.
And for people who don't read Hindi, ho gaya to ho, when he was talking about Kashmiri Hindu exodus, what is that? What is he saying?
So that part is in an interview about the forced migration of Kashmiri Hindus from Kashmir Valley in the 1990s under the pressure of Islamic terrorism and under the pressure of continuing violence, murder, and rape in the 90s. He had responded in an interview to Amish Devgan, a TV anchor, that what has happened. What can we do? So, this is a guy who was at the helm of leadership in the country, decision making process, foreign policy, and this is a guy who is saying, we can't do anything. Violence happened against Hindus. They were forced to leave their homes, continue to stay in exile, a million of them, even today, after 30 years. And this is exactly the example because of which Prime Minister Modi came to power. It is the indifference and the absolute deplatforming, dehumanization of Hindus in the only country of the world where they're still in significant majority and have a safe space, which led to the rise of leaders like Modi who actually cared about the masses.
It's a. I find it very shocking that a mainstream politician, um, you know, has a callous attitude when it comes to killing and exodus of Hindus, and and he has the audacity to compare Hindus who are defending themselves to ISIS and Boko Haram. Hindus have never kidnapped hundreds of girls or randomly go and kill village full of people, nor have they executed people at will or had launched an armed struggle, uh, destroying civilizations and countries. And he has the audacity to compare Hindus to ISIS and Boko Haram. So that on that somber note, I think we are at the end of today's program, and I want to thank you for all the great work that you continue doing. I think we never showed this, but this is the visual that people want if they wanted to see. I'll take it away, and but I want to so that I want to say thank you for all that you do for the Hindu community in America. I want to thank our viewers who. It became somewhat of a longer show because we invited a guest to talk about a very important issue. So I want to thank Kanchanda for joining, Kanchan Banerjee for joining. Utsada, thank you very much for all your hard work on this show that you put in every week. And I want to thank everyone for joining this show. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti. He is the executive director of Hindu Pact. I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. And Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday. And we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. Please join us again next week when we pick and talk about another important American Hindu issue. Thank you again for joining. And as we fade away, we will once again play a special music created just for this episode of Hindu Lounge by our friends at Decibel. It's amazing, amazing piece of music. Please, stay tuned and listen to this music. I cannot thank Decibels enough for creating the music for this particular episode. And with that, thank you and namaste. And please stay tuned as we play the music by Decibel.